A nation you've probably never heard of just broke the entire West African order. Guinea-Bissau didn't just have a coup. It walked out of ECOWAS, accused France of controlling the continent, and then did something no one saw coming. It handed 3 landlocked military juntas direct access to the Atlantic Ocean. This isn't just another African power shift. This is the moment a parallel system started to replace the old one. And if you think this stays contained to West Africa, you're not paying attention. What happens next will decide whether a revolution spreads, or whether an entire region collapses into something far more dangerous. On November 7, 2025, tanks rolled into Bissau. By sunrise, President Umaro Sissoco Embalo was no longer in power. General Horta Inamaman seized control in a swift military takeover, dissolved the government, and declared himself head of a new junta. Within hours, Guinea-Bissau became the latest West African nation to fall under military rule. And then just weeks later, the junta made a move that sent shockwaves far beyond its borders. Guinea-Bissau announced it was leaving ECOWAS permanently. This wasn't just another coup. This was the unraveling of regional order in real time. ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, immediately condemned the takeover. The bloc suspended Guinea-Bissau's membership, imposed diplomatic sanctions, and demanded a return to constitutional rule. It was the same playbook used in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. But this time, the junta didn't blink. Instead of negotiating or stalling, General Inamaman's government issued a statement framing ECOWAS as an institution of institutional hostility and external interference. The message was clear. Guinea-Bissau would no longer submit to regional pressure. It would chart its own course. Consequences be damned. What makes this moment so significant is the precedent. Since 2020, West Africa has witnessed a surge in military takeovers. Mali fell in 2020 and again in 2021. Burkina Faso collapsed in 2022. Niger followed in 2023. Each time, ECOWAS responded with suspensions, sanctions, and threats of intervention. And each time, the juntas pushed back. In early 2024, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger jointly announced their own withdrawal from ECOWAS and formed the Alliance of Sahel States, a new coalition built on mutual defense and anti-Western sentiment. Now Guinea-Bissau is following the same path. The question is no longer whether ECOWAS can enforce its authority. It's whether ECOWAS still matters at all. Guinea-Bissau is a small country, barely 2 million people, fragile infrastructure, chronic instability. It's had more coups and attempted coups than years of stable governance since independence in 1974. But its location is strategic. Sitting on the Atlantic coast, bordering Senegal and Guinea, it's a gateway for trade, migration, and increasingly transnational crime. Drug trafficking routes from Latin America to Europe run through its waters and airstrips. Cocaine seizures have been linked to high-ranking officials for years. Instability here doesn't stay contained. It ripples outward, into regional security networks, into trade corridors, into the broader Sahel crisis. And now, with ECOWAS out of the picture, Guinea-Bissau's junta is free to operate with far less scrutiny. No regional observers. No threat of military intervention. No pressure to hold elections or restore civilian rule. General Inamaman has effectively gambled that isolation is preferable to compliance. He's betting that regional solidarity is a myth, that ECOWAS lacks the political will or military capacity to enforce its own rules. And so far, he's been proven right. This is where the stakes become clear. ECOWAS was designed to prevent exactly this kind of political collapse. It was built to defend democracy, uphold the rule of law, and maintain stability across West Africa. But in the past 5 years, it has failed repeatedly. It failed to stop the coups. It failed to reverse them. And now it's losing members. The bloc that once represented 15 nations and over 400 million people is fracturing in real time. If Guinea-Bissau's exit is permanent, and if other nations follow, the entire architecture of West African regional governance could collapse. There are no guarantees here, no clear path forward, General Emmanuel could consolidate power indefinitely, or his regime could fracture under internal pressure. ECOWAS could regroup and reassert its influence, or it could continue its slow disintegration. What's certain is this: Guinea-Bissau's withdrawal is not an isolated event. It's a symptom of a larger breakdown, and the implications stretch far beyond one small nation on the Atlantic coast. What happens next could redefine the region. Guinea-Bissau didn't just leave ECOWAS. It accused the entire bloc of being a front for foreign control. In a statement released weeks after the November coup, General Horta Inamamen's junta laid out a scorching indictment. ECOWAS, it claimed, was not a defender of African sovereignty, but a tool of Western interests, particularly France. The organization had enabled economic exploitation, perpetuated poverty, and maintained political dominance over its member states, while delivering almost nothing in return. This wasn't diplomatic language. This was a declaration of ideological war, and it's gaining traction. The junta's rhetoric taps into a broader wave of anti-Western sentiment that's been building across the Sahel and West Africa for years. In Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, military governments have expelled French troops, shut down foreign-funded media outlets, and publicly denounced what they call neo-colonial interference. Russian flags have appeared at rallies. Crowds have cheered the departure of Western diplomats. The narrative is consistent. Africa has been independent in name only, and ECOWAS has been complicit in maintaining that system. Now Guinea-Bissau is adding its voice to that chorus. But here's where it gets complicated. Guinea-Bissau has virtually no French military presence. Its colonial history is Portuguese, not French. France has little strategic interest in Bissau compared to its deep entanglements in Francophone West Africa. So why is the junta invoking French neocolonialism? Because the accusation isn't really about France. It's about ECOWAS itself and the broader system it represents. By framing ECOWAS as a puppet of Western powers, the junta positions itself as a liberator, a defender of true sovereignty. It's a powerful narrative, and in a region where distrust of former colonial powers runs deep, it resonates. ECOWAS was founded in 1975 to promote economic integration, political stability, and collective security. For decades, it played a stabilizing role in West Africa, mediating conflicts, overseeing elections, and coordinating regional policy. But in recent years, its credibility has eroded. Critics argue that the bloc is dominated by a handful of powerful states, Nigeria and Senegal chief among them, and that its leadership is too often aligned with Western diplomatic priorities. When ECOWAS threatened military intervention in Niger after the 2023 coup, many saw it not as a defense of democracy, but as an attempt to preserve Western influence. The intervention never happened. The threat was hollow, and the perception of ECOWAS as ineffective or worse, compromised, only deepened. This is where the stakes become clear. If ECOWAS is seen as serving foreign interests rather than African ones, its legitimacy collapses. And once legitimacy is gone, member states have no reason to comply. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have already left. Guinea-Bissau is now the fourth. Other nations are watching closely. If the narrative that ECOWAS is a neo-colonial instrument continues to spread, the bloc could face a cascade of exits. And if that happens, the entire framework of regional governance in West Africa dissolves. The economic dimension is just as critical. Guinea-Bissau is one of the poorest countries in the world. Its infrastructure is crumbling. Public services barely function. Corruption is endemic. ECOWAS membership was supposed to bring trade benefits, development aid, and regional stability. But for many ordinary Bissau Guineans, those promises have never materialized. The junta is capitalizing on that frustration, framing the withdrawal as a rejection of a system that has failed to deliver. Whether that narrative is entirely accurate is almost beside the point. What matters is that people believe it, and this pattern is repeating across the region. In Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has framed his military government as a break from a corrupt, Western-aligned elite. In Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta has positioned himself as a nationalist resisting foreign interference. In Niger, General Abdurrahman Tiani has echoed the same themes. The rhetoric is strikingly similar, and it's finding an audience. Young populations, frustrated by stagnant economies and persistent insecurity, are increasingly receptive to leaders who promise a clean break from the past, even if that break comes at the barrel of a gun. So is this a genuine ideological shift or opportunistic propaganda? The truth is probably both. Military juntas need legitimacy, and anti-Western sentiment provides it. But the sentiment itself is real. Decades of uneven development, broken promises, and ongoing inequality have created fertile ground for this kind of politics. Guinea-Bissau's withdrawal from ECOWAS is both a strategic calculation and a reflection of deeper discontent. What happens next will determine whether this is the beginning of a new era of African autonomy or the collapse of regional order into fragmentation and instability. Guinea-Bissau just handed the Alliance of Sahel States something it desperately needed: access to the Atlantic Ocean. In the weeks following its withdrawal from ECOWAS, the junta led by General Traoré and Coup signaled its intention to join the AES, a coalition formed by Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger after their own exits from the regional bloc. On paper, Guinea-Bissau is a small, fragile state with little military or economic power. But geographically, it's a game changer, and that changes everything. The Alliance of Sahel States was established in 2024 as a direct challenge to ECOWAS. All three founding members are landlocked. All three are led by military juntas. All three have expelled Western troops and embraced closer ties with Russia. But being landlocked is a strategic vulnerability. Trade, arms imports, humanitarian aid, all of it depends on access to ports controlled by other nations. Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, and Ghana have historically served as gateways to the Sahel. But those countries remain loyal to ECOWAS. They've imposed sanctions. They've restricted access. And they've made it clear that defecting from the regional order comes with costs. Now, with Guinea-Bissau in the fold, AES has its own outlet to the sea. The port of Bissau is modest, underdeveloped, and lacks the infrastructure of Dakar or Abidjan. But its sovereign territory controlled by a government ideologically aligned with the Sahel juntas. That means direct access to global shipping routes without relying on ECOWAS-aligned states. It means the ability to import goods, weapons, and resources without external interference. It means strategic autonomy. And in a region where leverage is everything, that's a serious shift in the balance of power. This is where the stakes become clear. AES is no longer just a symbolic coalition of disaffected military regimes. It's becoming a functional counterbloc with its own security architecture, economic coordination, and now geographic reach. If Guinea-Bissau formally joins, the map of West African alignment is redrawn. You'll have two competing visions of regional order. ECOWAS, representing the established framework of democratic governance and Western alignment, and AES, representing military rule, anti-Western sentiment, and a rejection of external oversight. The question is no longer whether this split is temporary. It's whether reconciliation is even possible. The implications ripple outward. For Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, Guinea-Bissau's membership solves a logistics problem that has quietly undermined their political viability. Sanctions don't work if there's an open trade route. Isolation doesn't work if there's a willing partner on the coast. ECOWAS hoped that economic pressure would force these juntas to negotiate or collapse. Instead, they've built an alternative system. And with Guinea-Bissau as a gateway, that system becomes far more resilient. But there are risks. Guinea-Bissau is notoriously unstable. Its government has been overthrown or attempted to be overthrown more than a dozen times since independence. Its military is weak, fractured, and prone to infighting. Drug trafficking networks operate with near impunity. Integrating a state this fragile into AES could destabilize the entire coalition. If General Anameman's regime collapses, or if internal factions turn against the AES alignment, the strategic advantage disappears. And if ECOWAS or external actors decide to exploit that vulnerability, the gamble could backfire spectacularly. There's also the broader geopolitical dimension. Russia has been quietly expanding its influence across the Sahel, providing military support, diplomatic cover, and media backing to the AES states. If Guinea-Bissau joins the alliance, Russian interests gain a foothold on the Atlantic coast. That's not just a regional development. That's a signal to Washington, Paris, and Brussels that the West's grip on West Africa is slipping. And it's a signal to Beijing that new partnerships are forming in a region where China already has significant economic investments. ECOWAS, meanwhile, is running out of options. It can't reverse the coups. It can't force compliance. And now, it can't even rely on geographic isolation to contain the breakaway states. The bloc is facing an existential crisis. If it can't adapt, it risks becoming irrelevant. If it overreacts, it risks triggering a wider conflict. And if it does nothing, the slow disintegration continues. So what happens next? Does AES consolidate into a durable regional power, or does it fracture under the weight of its own contradictions? Does ECOWAS find a way to reassert its authority, or does it fade into symbolic irrelevance? The answers will shape not just West Africa, but the future of African regional integration itself. Guinea-Bissau's junta just announced it's done borrowing from the West. No more IMF loans. No more World Bank conditions. No more foreign consultants dictating policy. Instead, the military government is adopting a development model inspired directly by Burkina Faso's Captain Ibrahim Traore, self-reliance, state-led industrialization, and a complete rejection of what it calls the debt trap of international finance. This isn't just economic policy. This is being framed as the beginning of an African revolution. And across parts of West Africa, people are paying attention. The centerpiece of Guinea-Bissau's new approach is cashews. The country is one of the world's largest producers of raw cashew nuts, but for decades, it's exported nearly all of them unprocessed. The value is extracted elsewhere in India, Vietnam, or Europe, where the nuts are shelled, roasted, and packaged. Guinea-Bissau gets a fraction of the profit. The junta solution is straightforward. Ban the export of raw cashews entirely and force the development of a domestic processing industry. Build the factories locally. Employ Bissau-Guinean workers. Keep the profits in country. It's economic nationalism in its most direct form. To fund this transformation, the government isn't turning to foreign lenders. It's mobilizing the military. Soldiers are being deployed not just for security, but for construction. Roads, bridges, processing plants, all of it built using local labor and military logistics. The model mirrors what's happening in Burkina Faso, where Captain Traore has tasked the army with infrastructure projects and framed it as a patriotic duty. The message is clear. Development doesn't require foreign debt. It requires discipline, mobilization, and political will. This is where the stakes become clear. If this model works, even partially, it undermines the entire architecture of Western-led development in Africa. For decades, the IMF and World Bank have conditioned loans on structural adjustment, privatization, austerity, and market liberalization. Critics argue these policies have enriched foreign investors while leaving African economies dependent and underdeveloped. Guinea-Bissau's junta is rejecting that framework outright. And it's doing so not quietly, but as a public declaration of sovereignty. But there are serious questions about feasibility. Building a cashew processing industry requires capital, skilled labor, reliable energy, and access to markets. Guinea-Bissau has chronic electricity shortages. Its roads are in disrepair. Corruption is endemic. The military, while disciplined in some respects, has little experience managing large-scale industrial projects. And without access to international credit, the government will have to rely on domestic revenue, which in a country this poor is severely limited. The vision is bold. The execution is uncertain. Still, the symbolism matters. Across the Sahel and parts of West Africa, there's growing frustration with traditional development models. Young populations see stagnant economies, persistent inequality, and leaders who seem more accountable to foreign creditors than their own people. When Captain Traore speaks about Burkina Faso refusing IMF loans and building its own future, it resonates. When Guinea-Bissau echoes that language and adopts similar policies, it reinforces a narrative that's gaining momentum. Africa doesn't need the West to develop. It needs to break free from it. The opening of Guinea-Bissau's ports to AES partners is another piece of this puzzle. By offering Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger direct access to Atlantic trade routes, the junta is positioning itself as a critical node in an emerging countersystem. Goods can flow in and out without passing through ECOWAS-aligned states. Trade agreements can be negotiated outside Western frameworks. And economic policy can be designed with autonomy, not conditionality, as the guiding principle. But sovereignty comes with costs. Rejecting foreign loans means rejecting foreign expertise, technology, and market access that often comes with those loans. Building domestic industries is expensive and slow. And if the cashew processing plants fail, or if infrastructure projects stall, the junta will have little to show for its rhetoric. The risk is that self-reliance becomes isolation, and isolation becomes stagnation. So is this a genuine economic transformation, or a populist gamble that will collapse under its own contradictions? The answer will depend on execution, political stability, and whether the junta can deliver tangible results before frustration sets in. What's undeniable is that Guinea-Bissau is now part of a broader ideological shift, one that's challenging decades of assumptions about how African economies should be structured and who gets to decide. What happens next won't just determine Guinea-Bissau's future. It will test whether a new model of African development is possible, or whether the old systems are too entrenched to replace.